Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Okay, so in this episode, I thought I'd try to say something about Carl Jung and his view on the crisis of meaning in us moderns. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Okay, so Jung believes there's this meaning crisis. Now, why is this? Well, basically, it's because he thinks that our rational side has been overemphasized so as to exclude our irrational side. That's to say, it's because we live almost entirely in the domain of the scientific and the rational that we've lost the meaning of life. Now, I should get a bit more specific here. So when he talks about the rational and the irrational, what he's referring to is really the conscious and the unconscious aspects of us. And for Jung, the conscious side, our rational one, is only a very small part of the total individual. What constitutes most of us is our unconscious side, our irrational one. And here's the crucial thing. It's this unconscious side that actually provides us with meaning in life. Something it does in the form of spirituality and religion. So it's no surprise then why it is he thinks that we're struggling with meaning today. It's because we're too preoccupied with our conscious side, and so we exclude the spiritual and the religious from our life. The possibility that we experience the numinous or even God is eliminated. It's no wonder then why it is we moderns are in search of soul. Okay, but I think that we need to get a bit more detailed here. So, first of all, when Jung talks about religion or God, what does he mean exactly? Well, for starters, we should be cautious in seeing Jung as an ally of traditional or orthodox religion. And what I mean by this is that I don't think Jung thinks of God as some sort of transcendental being out there. But rather, he thinks of him as a kind of psychic fact. God is more like a power that emanates from deep within our unconscious. What Jung called the collective unconscious, in fact. And I'll get to this idea of the collective unconscious in a second. But, it is interesting. One of the ways that Jung came to be convinced of this important religious need that we all have, this need for God, let's say, is through his clinical practice. What he noticed is that those clients of his who had completely given up on God and felt that things were meaningless or empty actually reported having dreams whose symbolic expression pointed to the divine. In other words, their unconscious side was trying to assert what their everyday conscious side had eliminated or discounted. Actually, before I continue, I should mention something. I should mention that compared to his mentor, Freud, Jung was much more serious about the importance of religion and spirituality. I mean, Freud was a staunch atheist who believed that religion was basically a kind of neurosis and that God was just a kind of infantile desire for a father figure. Now, Jung doesn't agree with this at all. Rather, he sees in our yearning for the religious something deeply, deeply important. Actually, as we'll see, he sees in it the expression of the deepest urge within us to fulfill ourselves. Okay, but now let's get to this idea of the collective unconscious. because it's super important when it comes to this topic of meaning and spirituality and religion in Jung. It's where our religious instinct comes from, in fact. But actually, before I get into this, I think I should first quickly say something about what Jung called the personal unconscious, because it might help us to really see some important differences. So Jung's concept of the personal unconscious is actually pretty similar to Freud's notion of the unconscious. This is where the repressed part of us goes and resides. You know, it's where painful ideas and lost memories and in general aspects of us not ready for consciousness are contained. But the key here is that this is all, in one way or another, personal content. But according to Jung, underneath this personal unconsciousness lies an even deeper layer of psyche called the collective unconsciousness. Now, here's the thing. None of the content in there derives from personal experience. It's nothing that we've personally acquired. Rather, it's all inborn, something we're endowed with. And it contains content that's more or less the same everywhere and in all individuals. It's universal. It's a stratum of the unconscious that's shared by everybody, by all members of different civilizations and cultures, by all human beings. So we're not born blank slates, to say the least. Okay, but now we're getting to a really important part. So out of this collective unconscious arise certain symbols, or what Jung calls archetypes. These are symbols found in all times that we don't consciously learn, but they're passed on to us. Or maybe better yet, we inherit them through our psyche. Okay, but let's try to get a bit more precise. So what are these archetypes exactly, and why are they so important? Well, Jung seems to conceive of archetypes as something like archaic forms of innate human knowledge or mental patterns or images which are shared with other members of the human species. I've heard it expressed like this. They're sort of like the distillate of the millenniums of human experience. And here's the thing. The God archetype is one of these. Now, Jung doesn't seem to be entirely clear, but from what I can understand, the God archetype is something like a predisposition that we have towards the infinite, or better yet, towards wholeness. In other words, we all have this innate tendency to reach beyond mere conscious awareness to that which is bigger and more powerful and more complete. So rising up from the depths of our psychic nature, from our collective unconscious, is just this tendency. Now that's the God image. Okay, but there's another extremely important archetype that's associated with all of this, and that's the archetype of the self. For Jung, the self contains and represents the entire psyche. It represents unity. It represents the unity between the conscious and the unconscious. The self is the retrieval and the formation of that larger circle that envelops the small dot that is our ego. In this way, the self is the product of what Jung calls individuation, which is basically something like the project of the integration of the various aspects of our psyche. And by the way, Jung thought that individuation is something we usually try to undergo later in the second half of our life. Anyway, we should see now why it is we ignore the collective unconscious at our own peril, and why it's so important to be open to the deepest part of our psyche. It's because we return to the self when we heed the call of the God archetype or impulse. The religious drive heals because it unites us to ourselves. It reconciles ourselves to ourself. It's the start of the completion of all aspects of what it means to be truly human. It's the impetus to self-realization. It calls out to us not so much to become what you are, but to become all that you are. You know, St. Augustine said that God is more intimate to me than I am to myself. Now, Jung would agree, but with the qualification that God is not out there somewhere, but he's in us, locked in our dreams and housed in our archaic soul. And he's waiting for us to open up and to pay attention to that immeasurable increase of wisdom that he has to offer, so that we eventually discover that who we are is only a very small part of who we could be. Bye for now.